So how can we make digital more natural? Or let me rephrase that. Actually, how can we transfer nature into the digital evolution? I think that's a very interesting question, especially nowadays in our digital world, where we're moving along quite a bit. So if you look into our patients, I mean, just look into, for example, here, Marty, she's a denture patient. Or we look into Pam, she's a denture patient as well. Or even Paul, he's most likely a typical digital denture patient. Or into Kirsten, she's a very young denture patient. So all these patients, they have certain needs, and they have needs kind of, they had to go fulfilled basically, and they're all coming out of different situations. Yeah, if you just look at in situations like this, where we go through a setup and we're going through a process of producing digital dentures, and for a kind of trying to achieve a natural result. So when we now just step back and look into the history on digital dentures, I put this together on a kind of little timeline, the history a little bit, and let's start just on the left side, just where we started with kind of digital dentures for something milled, something monolithic and out of PMMA basically, something would be all, if you were digital already a long time ago, would kind of played with, okay, how can we actually mill something out of PMMA, which maybe is like a denture? Yeah, most of them we have to then reline it with acrylic to make it fit and make it proper go. Later on, we actually were able to mill PMMA denture bases, real denture bases, and we could then actually bond either single teeth or tooth segments to that PMMA base. And after we were kind of past that stage, we were actually then going a little bit back and forth also. We could actually then mill wax bases and utilize real denture teeth. So we're trying to make it still more aesthetic than it's just a milled PMMA tooth. Yeah? So that's kind of where we are right now, I think, a lot of times. Or then now, of course, we're playing with printing. Yeah, printing denture bases, printing or printed tooth segments, bonded or even light cured together, which is definitely also a way to go, but still aesthetically not very kind of pleasant. So we're still trying to kind of make it aesthetically nicer. Yeah, or what we can do as well, especially for maybe immediate or for planning stages, we can print the whole denture just in one piece and apply something pink to the gingiva, either composite or pink acrylic, it depends. So that's kind of, these are different ways to go into the digital denture market or in the digital denture production or fabrication. So now differentiating more is when we look into milling. Yeah, so we have different kind of vendors or different manufacturers, they offer us kind of solutions for mill dentures. We also have printing solutions where we also have different kind of companies, they offer us their solution for printed dentures. And don't hang me up on the names here on these companies. There are many more out there. I just took out what I thought are the most well-known basically. If we now concentrate a little bit more on milling on this webinar, we definitely have to look into monolithic blanks. And there is one really interesting system out there. It's called the BDS system, the Baltic denture system, where we have basically different sizes on already prefabricated denture arches present. We literally mill just the entire surface, what should fit the human ridge, basically, or the mouth, the arch. And so we're utilizing here real denture teeth. They are already bonded into or cured into a pink PMMA base, basically, and it's one block and get milled out. The interesting thing on that system is we can actually utilize this with an analog model or without an analog model. So we can theoretically go totally digital. For that, we have to use a special impression tray, so we still get a soft tissue compression. That's the biggest challenge right now still on intraoral scanning. The edentulous arch, we don't have a soft tissue compression. So to do that, we need a special impression tray, which already also kind of serves us as a bite registration or an aesthetic trying. We also have a special Facebook connected to that, so we can literally take all records on initial seating of the patient, initial patient appointment, and you have a special impression material. So that all these records go to the dental laboratory, and the dental laboratory can scan it with the desktop scanner. And from there, we can take it basically to the design phase, and we can mill the dentures, and we have literally a denture in 2 visits. If that is predictable for every patient and for every denture, most likely not. We cannot serve very extreme situations. With extreme situations, I'm talking about extreme class 3 or extreme class 2 patients. It does not work. Yeah, so we are limited to a class 1 or to kind of not so extreme class 2 patients. Also right now, we just can basically concentrate on full mouth rehab, so it means on a denture in the maxilla and a denture in the mandible. So the same way is with an analog model, the difference is that the dentist basically takes impressions, like the dentist would take impression with a custom tray ideally, bite registration, that records go to the dental laboratory, and we here in the lab, we basically can start designing the denture and also can mill it out. We maybe need 1 or 2 visits more to satisfy the patients here just because of the bite registration and the custom tray. So that's the difference. If we now look more close into that, let me advance pretty quickly here. You see just the workflow, how it actually works. So you see the patient comes to a functional impression with the key set basically from BD, the Baltic Denture system, and that key set, then these records go to the dental laboratory, and here again, we scanning the situation, we creating or we designing the upper lower dentures, we milling it basically in the prefabricated blocks already, and we finishing it up, and it goes to delivery to the patient. So that's a very smooth, quick workflow. And you see here, that's kind of the blocks there. You can basically order them literally in small, medium, large, fitting an arch, and you can order them in all different kind of denture molds, which makes it actually pretty nice. You cannot adjust basically setup. So the setup is there. It's more very straight, very clean looking. It's not very kind of individual with a lot of characteristics in there. It's just not possible because everything is already bonded in. So let me advance quickly. Here you see how now the denture gets milled out basically and can be finished. The finishing can be done with just polishing later on, or you can characterize the denture base, of course, with like your stain with different acrylics or composites. It always depends what the patient's need is. What I like is also the FPS system. Why do I like that? Because it still leaves me or gives me the flexibility of moving teeth in a different position. I still can make a setup, not just like a straight fence looking like setup. I can rotate teeth, I can crowd teeth if I want to, if the patient wants to, of course. But also it allows me actually to go to a trying phase. So you see here a blank milled, basically it's a wax blank milled out, and you see the little sockets here. These are for the denture teeth, they're fitting in here. So how does it work? And of course, we have a traditional finish process or the progressive finish process. Let's differentiate at first before we go into the workflow. The traditional finish process would mean we would mill a wax base, and we would mill the entire surface of the denture teeth, and I will show in a couple slides how that works later on. And we put the denture teeth into the wax base, and we go to try-in, and we can make adjustments. And then we have the choice of heat or cold cure to process traditionally a denture. Implant reconstructions are possible because we still have just a wax base, so we can heat cold cure bars in it or locators, so we are pretty flexible with that. The more progressive finish process would mean we actually mill, instead of a wax base, we do mill a PMMA base, and using the milled denture teeth basically and bond them into that PMMA base. The advantage of that is we have an industrial manufactured PMMA, which is just unbelievable strong. And that kind of gives us definitely a big advantage in terms of strength and breakage to the denture. The process is faster, but still we can go through a trying phase because we would be able to either print or mill that whole denture design first in a resin wax or just in a printed resin, just to get a try-in and maybe do adjustments and transfer that information then to our previous design to change it before we mill it in PMMA. So that definitely saves us sometimes from maybe the not so wanted redo. So now, by the way, this is, I mentioned, I want to show the denture teeth. So you see on the left upper corner, the denture teeth, they're literally bonded in wax, in a resin wax, basically, and in the holder. And so it goes into a milling machine, and the milling machine mills the entire surface to fitting into that denture where you see the sockets and the human ridge, basically, that that fits all together. And you have everything together on the model and can put the denture teeth in the wax for trying, or if it's already PMMA milled, or you bond it into the PMMA. So now that is basically what I mentioned before, the trying phase on the right side. If you mill everything in PMMA, you mill a resin wax in kind of tooth colored, in kind of an eggshell color for a trying, so the doctor can do adjustments and can transfer these adjustments to the dental laboratory that we can do the changes needed. So here again, upper, lower. Also right now, most of our digital denture systems are made to actually do a maxilla and mandible together. It's just because it's very difficult right now to actually just do one arch fitting an existing opposing dentition, just because the milling machine usually has to basically mill on both sides, and that's kind of in progress still. There are systems out there where we can print or mill denture teeth, and yes, they are basically adjustable on both sides because we're a little bit more flexible with that. There is aesthetic a big issue. We'll show some slides as well, aesthetically. Where I see in the future, well, what I like on the FPS system, especially with the wax space, we're pretty flexible in terms of complexity of the restoration. We can use it on implants, we can use it on tooth-borne. It doesn't really matter, so we're pretty flexible with that. So we can do bar cases, locator cases, or just denture cases. And here, that's I think also where the future is going, combining basically implant reconstructions, either in overdentures or fixed, and with the denture modules to be able to actually satisfy the digital workflow totally. So let's just take a look in kind of the workflow of designing with the FPS system a digital denture. And I do have to jump through most likely a little bit faster than I wanted to, just because of time. So basically what I really enjoy on digital dentures is we still have to go through a model analysis. Otherwise the computer does not know what to do. And that actually helps us, or helps me sometimes in the lab, also training my technicians to say, hey, you know what, just, hey, design a denture. Here's the module, go from A to Z. So they have to go through an analysis basically, and what they even in the same time they learn a lot, and again reminded them, oh wow, yeah, I forgot about the model analysis when I do a denture. That's actually pretty cool. So I can in here go through a occlusal plane setting that is set up with the bite registration, which is scanned, and you see here the occlusal plane. I can move that if I have to. I then have to mark, you see here the maxillary tuberosity on both sides, just to give the computer the idea where all landmarks are, what we need for a good setup. Incisal papilla has to get marked, the midline has to get marked, labial surface limit has to get marked for the labial, position of the lateral should be marked, first premolar position, the mandibular folds has to get marked just to know how long the denture is going to be. And when we go to the lower arch, we also have to mark the buccal frenums. First premolar position again. Lingual frenum has to get marked. It's for our border molding. Retromolar pads has to get marked. And again, the midline has to get marked to line both arches up nicely over the midline. Labial surface limit again. And the alveolar ridge line has to get marked as well. And the molar points, first molar points. Distal border of last molars has to get marked. There should be a little bit more back than there. Transfer molar points and correction areas upper jaw. So that's kind of the correction, the limits where we are or where we are into with our setup later on, where we're moving. Final setup lines on both sides. That's just the different viewpoints. And now it's getting interesting now here. Now on the left side, you see our wizard is showing different molds. We now have basically a library where we can choose from different tooth manufacturers, first of all, if we have the library in there, but then also different sizes. When we advance this, then we basically, when we choose a certain mold with the size, we then getting the teeth put in. And of course, the teeth are put in very straight, very kind of fence looking like. Now we can start, if we want to, adjusting the setup. Yeah, we can move teeth along the setup, so we can bring a tooth out. That's maybe a little bit too far, but we can move teeth, we can rotate teeth. Now we can make the overage bigger or smaller in limits, of course. It has to make sense. And after we are kind of finalized the setup, we then have to design our denture base. Yeah, so for that we have to mark our border molding, and that's usually I go all the way down, and I rather grind back a little bit if I have to, but I like to go all the way down. And on the upper and on the lower, of course. And now the computer throws us on a gingiva already, which is definitely not that pretty. So now we basically can start free-forming that gingiva. It's like same like the crown and bridge freeform module. We can festoon it nicely or not, or we can just smooth it out. Most of the time, what I do now more and more is actually I have it very smooth because I'm doing a lot of denture characterization, either with acrylic or composite later on. So I need some room to add additional material to that. Yeah, so that's the reason why I keep it usually relatively smooth. Here it's shown how the denture teeth is measured to get kind of milled in the intaglio surface. You see here that that tooth intersects the ridge, so that area basically has to get milled out. And that you see the computer does it already digitally, and that information gets transferred to the milling machine. When we put in the blank with the denture teeth, that area gets milled out, so it fits perfectly into our base and on our ridge. And you see here the same thing on these teeth. They are in the frame here on the right side. You see on the left side, these light areas are the areas that has to get milled out. And then basically, that's a more detailed festooning on these dentures here on these screenshots, and that's then ready to get milled. Here, I want to also focus a little bit on buccolingual or crossbites. So we have basically a regular occlusion. We can make lingualized occlusion, or even crossbites are possible without any problem. Here is the digital image of the nesting of the denture teeth. And then again, the image where everything gets milled out and finished. So finish options after milling. Again, I talked about this a little bit already about traditional finish process for the wax side, or progressive finish process if you already want to mill a PMMA base. Of course, we also can print it. Then for the more traditional finishing process is heat cure, cold cure. That's the question. I don't want to take that answer for up now. So it's just kind of, we can do both ways, what I actually really like. But then after curing or after milling or after printing, the biggest challenge still is how do we make these digital dentures aesthetic? How do we make them really fitting into a human body and look natural on it like a piece of plastic? And that's kind of a big topic, and we're actually doing a course in January 12th here in Miami about that. So if you're interested, please hit me on and write me an email or call me. A digital denture characterization course. So you see here, these are our dentures, and they're just very monolithic. They're just one color, pink, basically. And for many patients, I agree. They say, "Oh wow, I never had teeth before. I don't care." But for many patients, it's a big deal to really get something back, a quality of life back, and something natural. So here, one kind of way doing it is basically applying composite. That's the way I do a lot with pink composites, basically applying to the digital dentures and making them more natural. Yeah, so orange pink then, or dark pink. That's kind of my layering scheme I'm utilizing here as a very simplified chart. Of course, there's much more to it, and some translucency, transparency to get that result like this. And that's kind of definitely something, if you put this in a patient's mouth, it looks natural, and the patient smiles and they're happy. They say, "Oh wow, I never knew that a denture can look like this," and that's really nice. So that's kind of what I want to focus a little bit also on today, how do we make digital dentures more natural and more kind of fitting in a human body. I also want to mention, when I'm finishing dentures in general or acrylic work, of course, especially digital dentures as well, I always glaze my surface. I'm stop polishing it or high shine it. I'm using usually pumice, and then I'm glazing it with lacquer stain and glaze kits, and that works actually very nice because it seals all the pores. Fantastic. If I want to be more economic and don't go through a composite or acrylic characterization, I just can use stain and glaze technique to make a digital denture more natural looking, like here. It's just basically adding stain and glaze in certain areas to make it more natural. Or here, even in the teeth area, we can add some color. Usually I'm a ceramist, so I like to kind of give every tooth basically the look of a tooth and not of a piece of plastic. Yes, and then we have definitely happy patients. They like what they wear, but you have to see kind of different shades and different colors, just how nature is basically built, what nature's doing. Where are we going in the future with digital dentures? I think that's not an open book anymore. We know we definitely want to combine digital dentures and implant reconstructions, and we are definitely on a straightforward freeway to get there. Partials and digital dentures are getting combined. We already have partial modules. We can mill partials, so we also will be very soon combining the pink and the tooth basically to that partial in a digital way. So that's kind of where I see the future. And so I think I catch up the time a little bit. So that was the webinar for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope I gave you a quick insight into my digital denture world. Please